Finally in double digits, especially after yesterday with those heavy Tabata front rack and Anderson squat, front rack holds and Anderson squats. This workout is a 7-minute EMOM. This is inspired by Ryan Trahan, a workout that he posted on YouTube about 5 years ago. If you want to go watch him do the original one of this. And this is something that I did personally, routinely while the world was kind of shut down with the pandemic during COVID and things like that. It's something I could easily do at my garage gym that didn't involve a lot and didn't involve a lot of time either, because I was actually pretty busy with a lot of clients at that time. But either way, EMOM. Yeah, 1 minute of just leg raises here. Trying to keep the legs straight, feet tight together. Not only just don't want the feet to just be touching, you want to try and actually squeeze the feet together, okay? Using what's called as adduction, moving the bodies, and tightens up the lower core all the way through the lower diaphragm in through the pelvis and hips, and then it tightens everything up going back. Also, you notice how when I extend my legs down, as I keep my lower back into the floor. If you can't keep your lower back down, that is perfectly okay. Just don't go down quite as low when you do each one of those reps, so you can keep the feet up. Next up, Russian twists, going back and forth. You can always add weight to these if you want a little bit more of a challenge. For me, I try and fight the balance, keeping my legs tight together, moving through with everything. Now, see how I had somebody roll me into that ball? This is a 20-pound medicine ball. Again, like I said, you can always add weight to this. You do not have to. Certainly, you can always go to the option where you're doing just the body weight. To make this a little bit easier on yourself, rather than doing both feet together, you can always let one heel go to the floor, picking up that opposite leg, and then alternate maybe every 10-15 seconds or so, trying to move through. Or maybe you're more of a rep person, you like to do 10 reps switch sides, 10 reps switch sides, and so on. But that way you're still keeping that uniformity on both sides, keeping everything even. You don't want to just build one side more than the other as you do this. Trying to keep everything tight, working all the way through. Coming through this second minute, you can already see that I'm really starting to feel this one. After the Russian twist, moving into what's called is just a regular old crunch. Now, this is a little bit different crunch. I like to think about more of my sternum and chest going straight up versus crunching and making that lower back round. I'm not putting a ton of tension on my neck or anything. I'm really just trying to think about my chest and sternum going straight up to the sky as if there's a string that kind of tied it straight on that line versus going to that roundedness. You get a little bit more core engagement with this one and way more control. And most of the time when you're moving, lifting, doing things, even if it's V-ups, sit-ups, deadlifts, things of that nature, the spine is typically more in a straightened fashion and not in a curved fashion. So building the strength in that way will transition quite a bit more. That being said, doesn't mean that a curved spine can't be strong or isn't trained. Certainly do a bunch of hollow rocks and things like that tighten that up. Coming through this midpoint, through the halfway round here, if you get through this portion, this will be halfway. Seated knee tucks, trying to keep the legs extended, pulling the heels towards the butt, reaching the hands straight up towards those feet and ankles, getting that full crunch. Now, this is not a laying down knee tuck where you keep the lower back on the floor and pull them in tight. This one, you notice how I get my shoulders, lower back, and everything off the ground. The only thing that you're balancing on would be your butt. Moving through this one, trying to get as many reps as you can. As you do go through these EMOMs, rather than just doing maybe one rep at a time, now I know there might be a point where your body just starts to break down, but try and hit sets. Maybe you can hit 3, 4, 5, 10, whatever it might be for you, unbroken, and then keep your rest as short as you can in between sets. That way, instead of doing singles and letting the feet drop, you're keeping tension on the core the entire time. And time under tension is what we want. Now, coming into the second half here. Scissor kicks. These are much longer. These are not flutter kicks, still trying to keep the legs straight. Notice how the low back stays against the ground. I like to kind of pick my head up a little bit more. It offers a little bit more core engagement. Feel free to put your head back on the ground. Now, I do see a bunch of people cheating on this one. If your lower back comes off the floor, feel free to put your hands underneath your low back, but that doesn't mean that you're putting your hands underneath your butt and your glutes, helping your body pick up your legs. If you need to, bend your knees more, make it a little bit less range of motion. Maybe you move a little bit quicker. versus putting those hands underneath those legs. When you start putting those hands underneath your butt, the angle of your hands pushing against your butt makes it easier. That's why everybody likes to cheat that way. It's not something you're putting against your lower back. They end up putting it underneath their butt to make it easier on themselves. After this one, minute number 6, coming into that next EMOM. Oh, one of my personal favorite and one of these tough ones. It's called a star crunch or a star sit-up. Legs go out wide, and then you come up and crunch and grab your legs and tuck tightly into a ball. If you can do this without grabbing your legs and your knees, great, awesome for you for being able to do that 5 minutes in. I was not able to do that. But this one working on a little bit more of that lateral movement rather than moving in one straight line constantly like we always do. Always want to keep the body guessing as you move through any movement here, especially when you talk about your core. A lot of people tend to do one movement for 1,000 reps, I do 500 sit-ups or 200 sit-ups or whatever, 200 crunches. But you want to try and keep your body guessing so you have that cross training. And there's so much muscle in your core and so many different ways to contract, obliques, lower abs, upper abs. You have so much that are involved, serratus anterior, lower, those hip flexors, and everything that attaches, transverse abdominis, rotation, low back, all of it, right? So trying to really hit all of it. Bicycle crunches, keeping the feet down low to the floor. A lot of people start to let the feet rise up high off the ground. It's not something you want to try and do. That way you keep that lower back tight though. So if you need to, feel free to keep the legs up a little bit higher, only if it's aiding in keeping your lower back down. If you can't keep the tension in your lower back, then yes, let the feet rise up. If you can, stay tight, especially when you're starting to round a little bit more and drive that belly button into your spine and your spine into the floor. That will tighten up the lower core and get more engagement. Then yes, try and keep your feet as low as possible if you can. And big thing on this one is that rotation. I like to keep my elbows flared a little bit, best I can, rather than just tucking them straight in. If I wanted to just bring my elbow to my knee, I would. Okay, so trying to get that full rotation. There you go, 7-minute EMOM. Welcome to the Double Digit Club, everybody.